In the Malazan Book of the Fallen, we're told that the human race descends from the Imas, one of the so-called founding races that sparked civilization in the Malazan world. But other revelations tell us something more mysterious that indicates that this long-established truth is more false than it would seem, and that the distant ancestor to the human race is Trull Sengar. Spoiler warning for all 10 books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. In Book 4, House of Chains, the High Mage of the Army of the Apocalypse, Leoric, tries to open a path into the Warren of Telan, but instead ends up in the holy desert Waraku's most ancient memory, from before it was a desert. There he sees the corpse of a humanoid creature, which he describes as follows. More ape-like than a Tlani Mas, the skull behind the face is smaller as well. Yet he stood taller by far, more human in proportion. What manner of man was this? Later in the vision, he is rescued by his father, the god Osric. When Leoric states that the creature was neither human nor Imas, his father answers, "No, but they will be one day." The creature in the vision was an Eres, who were said to be the first species given awareness. They lived long before the Imas, who in turn lived hundreds of thousands of years before their presumed ancestors, the humans. Now, among the Eres, there was an elder goddess, a goddess who existed before the creation of the Warrens, known as the Eres Al. The Eres Al is not your typical fantasy goddess. No, she is a time-traveling, beast-looking creature who speaks a glottal language filled with barking, grunts, and clicking noises. But what is the role of the Eres Al in all of this? Well, in Book 5, Midnight Tides, we are introduced to a group of people called the Nerek, who used to be a moderately prosperous little collection of people living on a plateau between the Letheri and the Tiste-Dur on the continent of Leather. This is what is stated regarding the Nerek by Halbedict. They are the indigenous people whose territories span the entire south. They have been here a long, long time. The Nerek were all born of a single mother, countless generations past, who was the thief of fire and walked through time. One time, in her journey, she took within her a sacred seed, and so gave birth to a girl child. To all outward appearances, that child was little different from her mother, for the sacredness was hidden, and so it remains to this day, within the Nerek who are the offspring of that child. When asked if the mother of the Nerek had a name, he simply states, "She is known by a number of related names, also suggesting variations of a single person. Eres, Neeres, Eres Al." The Nerek's connection to their mother, their goddess, enabled them a power to traverse different realms and have magic dreams, and so they lived and multiplied. Until they got absolutely obliterated by Lether. The Nerek lost their connection to their goddess, and those that remain are shattered and lost. The thoughts of Seren Pedak reveal a bit more about the Nerek. The Nerek believed that they were the children of a woman and a serpent, and that the serpent dwelt still within the body, that gently curved spine, the stacked knuckles reaching up to hide its head in the center of the brain. But the mountains despised that serpent, desired only to drag it back to the ground, to return it once more to its belly, slithering in the cracks and coiled beneath rocks. And so, in the course of a life, the serpent was made to bow, to bend and twist. We know that the woman in the quote must be the Eresal, since that connects to the previous legend, but what about this serpent? Well, back in Book 4, House of Chains, a Tiste-Dur called Trull Sengar travels with his companion Onrak the Broken toward the First Throne. On their way there, as they exited the Warren of Telan, a tall, muscled, umber-hued woman appears, and time seems to sink and rise as it folds in on itself. By the time it's over, Trull Sengar is unconscious on the ground. The time-traveling Eres Al had appeared and raped Trull Sengar to take his DNA. There are many connections that can be drawn between this serpent and Trull Sengar. For one, the serpent is described as being despised, humbled, and forced to bow, bend, and twist toward the ground. In a similar way, Trull is shorn and humiliated by his own people, who look down on him for not changing his ways when they were. Trull is emotionally and spiritually steadfast, holding on to the values of his people, but at the same time deeply repressed for those values, much like the coiled serpent. Perhaps he was not a warrior after all, not a follower of commands capable of shutting out all unnecessary thoughts in service to the cause. Not a leader either, to stride ahead, certainty a blinding fire drawing all with him. I do not belong. The realization shocked him, slowed his steps. He looked around, feeling suddenly lost, here in the midst of his own people. The Tistaidur have changed, but I haven't. Another connection that you can make is that the snake or the serpent is the symbol of the Ouroboros, which could be interpreted as the time paradox created by the Eresal while making the Nerek species. After all, she took DNA from Trull, who lives in the present at the same time as the Nerek, and then went back in time with his DNA to actually create them in the first place. This makes it impossible to determine who really came first, kinda like the chicken or the egg. Another candidate to be the father of all the Nerek is Bottle, but the author of the book, Stephen Erikson himself, confirmed that Kettle is the child of Bottle, which means that, of course, through a process of elimination, only Trull is the viable candidate we know of. Before the Tistaidur march into war against the Letheri, their queen Mayen blesses the Nerek slaves that accompanied Hal Bedict and the caravan of Buruk the Pale. When the village gets absolutely blown to pieces by the Letheri, the Nerek slaves survive because of the sanctified ground that had been blessed by Mayen. After this, their powers return to them, making them as powerful as they had been before the Letheri initially attacked their homeland. But why? Well, we found out that through this event, the Eres Al had been awakened, thus granting them their powers again. So, there seems to be some form of connection between the Tistaidur and the Nerek, even though the Nerek absolutely despise the Edur. It is ironic then that despite this, a simple act of compassion causes the Eresal to awaken, making it all come full circle, just like the Ouroboros, because the Eresal then spends the remainder of the series trying to make certain people converge in leather to end the subjugation of her children, the Nerek. So, where does this connection come from? Well, see the Eres as the Malazan universe's Homo erectus. Linguistically, this makes sense because the word Eres is somewhat similar to the word erectus. In Spanish, tu eres literally means you are. You are the Eres. The Eres Al was of course Eres, making her children with Trull half Tistaidur, half Eres. Now, in real life, the descendants of the Erectus were the Homo sapiens, humans, which means that the Nerek would be very early Homo sapiens. So if we go back to the Mas, this means they are the Neanderthals, who everyone in real life initially thought were the ancestors of humans, which turned out to be wrong. So by comparing real life to the Malazan universe, the Nerek could very well be the progenitors of the entire human race. In the Bonehunters, we kind of maybe find some evidence that the Nerek actually spread all across the world, just like the Homo sapiens. The child death song, the Seti rite of passage from whelp into adulthood. A ritual that had, for girl and boy alike, included the gravelog, the hollowed out coffin and the night-long internment in the crypt of the bloodline. Buried alive, for the child to die, for the adult to be born. A test against the spirits of madness, the worms that lived in each person, coiled at the base of the skull, wrapped tight about the spine. Worms that were ever eager to awaken, to crawl, gnawing a path into the brain, whispering and laughing or screaming, or both. The tribe in the quote, the Seti, live on Kuantali, which is a continent quite far from Leather, where the Nerek seemingly originates. And yet this ritual sounds eerily similar to the Nerek's legend of the serpent. In either case, another interesting connection you can make is that the friends Trull Sengar and Onrak the Broken are actually both the fathers of the human species, since it is implied that Onrak and Kilava's descendants didn't participate in the ritual of Teylan, making them the Imas or Neanderthals who then mixed with the Nerek or early Homo sapiens to create modern humans. Trull Sengar being a progenitor for the human race also makes sense because throughout the series we realize that shadow is aspected to humanity, something that could be due to humanity itself having a distant relation to the original rulers of Shadow or Emirlan, that being the Tistaydur. The nature of humanity itself, being neither dark nor light but something in between, makes sense because, as we know, humans are capable of doing both terrible and extremely good things. By the end of the series, however, it is implied that Seren Pedak is pregnant with Trull's child, but it had actually been placed in a womb by the Eresal. This would seem to disprove the theory, but what if the Eresal, through her initial interaction with Trull, had twins, one who would create the Nerek, and one who would seal and complete the circle, the future Knight of Shadow, the son of Seren Pedak and Trull Sengar. This would explain why Bottle senses a single Tistaydur child in the Eresal in the Bonehunters, because she has already given the other to Seren Pedak. There is a lot more going on in this theory, but it gets very intricate and I wanted this video to cover the basics. If you want to check it out on your own, there are many threads online that cover this subject. Really, it's just a testament to how strong the Malazan theories can be, and this is not even close to being the craziest one. Perhaps I'll do a video on that at some point, but hope you liked the video and may Hood ignore you. Goodbye.